Holy cow. Oh my gosh. I can tell how loud it is. This is awesome. Oh my gosh, my heart started beating so fast. Okay. So I have a lot of Q&A to go through. Basically, when I give a talk, I have the students on pieces of paper, they submit questions. And I want to go through a bunch of them on my YouTube channel. I literally, and I'm not kidding you, I have hundreds because I haven't figured out how to do it yet. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to live stream them, because then I don't have to edit, and that's just like, then I can actually work through them, get them out without having to record a video, edit a video, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so this is really exciting. I've never done a live stream before. Boom. Sponsored by LaCroix. So let's just get into it with this one. Question 1. What's your favorite superhero? My personal favorite superhero changes a lot, but it's between these two guys, these two characters right here, Captain America and Iron Man. I think if I had to choose one super all-time favorite, oh my gosh, I think it would be Iron Man. However, I was born on the 4th of July, so I am Captain America. This question, do you like rock climbing and Alex Honnold or Tommy Caldwell? One moment, please. Yes, I like rock climbing. Alex Honnold, though. Who is this guy? Oh, yeah, the free solo guy. Yeah, he's incredible. Super driven. He blows my face off. I also like Tommy Chin. I think the guy who made that flick. And then Tommy Caldwell, not someone I've heard of either, because I'm not super into the rock climbing world, but I do like rock climbing. It's awesome. My little brother's way better at it than me. Not really a question, but something my dad told me, that no one can stop you but yourself. I thought it kind of went into the superhero theme. Yeah, that's incredible, actually. So the talk I gave was a superhero themed talk, and your identity, relating your identity to the gospel message, and just like how it's very similar between that and also every superhero movie ever, specifically origin stories. No one can stop you but yourself. That's actually a super, super old and profound thought. That when something bad is happening to you, that it's not the world that is awful and mixed up. In Genesis, God made the world like this. He said it's good. However, it's how you're acting in this world. Like your religion, it just teaches you how to act. And that no one can stop you but yourself. No one's in control but yourself. It's your filter. You're the superhero. That's a profound, brilliant, super wise thought. And that's actually an old Jewish teaching. Like how can I act best? If something awful is happening to me, was I living my best life to lead up to that? This next question, what really is an identity? So I talked a lot about identity. And identity, ooh, what does Google say? What's an identity, Google? I thought it would pull up. Oh, right here. Literally right here. Relation. This isn't what I wanted. Identity. This is what I wanted. Golly. I guess this is what holds back from live stream and normal, is I can cut stuff out on normal. The characteristics determining who or what a person or thing is, which is pretty good. Pretty good. It's the definition. Your identity is who you are. Okay. It's how you see yourself. It's how you should act in this world. When you know who you are, you know how to act. It's in politics. It's really interesting how people think your identity is characteristics of who you are. And when you think of it that way, you can just divide it infinitely. Like, I am a white male. millennial in his 20s and weighs over 250 pounds because I'm over 6'6". Like, how far am I going to go? That's my identity is not characteristics of who I am. It's how I act in this world is more what I'm getting at with what an identity is. And it's like Captain America back here, identity. I think he might portray the superhero, the identity, the religious identity in a superhero the best, because his faith is his true superpower. When he goes out into battle, when he goes out, whether it's like a literal, he's beating the crap out of someone, or just in mental battle with anyone, you can't change him. He has like the perfect morality, ideally. That's his superpower. The world does not change him. He changes the world. And if you have a corrupt worldview, you're going to have to deal with him. He's going to be in your way because he is going to stand up for what is right. He has his identity so well centered. He can't, what the quote in the movie? When I see someone in trouble, I can't back down. Alita Battle Angel did a similar thing, did something very similar. It's a weird movie, but it was like really cool with the identity. Alita like finds herself in this life and doesn't know who she is. And she just carries herself like just very timidly. And then as the movie progresses and she finds out who she is, like her adopted father, the doctor guy, teaches her who she is. Like she's the most advanced warrior ever created. She's from Mars in that world. When she found out that she's this super advanced warrior, but she has a human brain. Again, with the whole human characteristic, like that's the common trait in all these superhero movies. Like they have this extra power, physical power, but their humanity is their superpower, or what drives the core of their faith, their identity, who they are. They can just live it out with their extra strength or whatever. And in that movie, she actually carries herself differently. Once she knows her identity, she acts differently. She goes in their underworld they live in. She goes to the pit of that, where all these ravagers, where all these bounty hunters are. And she's just like gathering them up to like go get the main antagonist of the story at that point. And she carries herself with such confidence. She knows who she is. She literally acts differently. You can see it. I just spit everyone when you're watching that movie. And that's a part of the movie when the antagonist actually comes in the room and kills this like innocent puppy that she started to like. And because she knows who she is, you get the incredible scene that I cannot stand by in the presence of evil. And it shows you the back half of the scene in the trailer, but in the movie, what she does is she kneels over and wipes her fingers in like the puppy's blood and puts them under her eyes, like war paint. And then she goes and attacks this thing. And it's like, when you know who you are, when you know your identity, especially in the spiritual world, that's powerful. And like the demons, they attack you. And when you don't know how to act, you just like, you put up your shield. You don't know who you are. You go into defensive mode when you don't have a well-grounded identity. So that's a little extra, but I love identity. I could just go on literally forever. Oh man. Okay, so this one's really good actually. This has 3 different questions on it. How do you decipher Catholic teachings on pornography from Christian teachings? How do you decipher the difference between the two? I'm going to kind of go about this maybe in a different way. I would challenge to look at what's similar. The Catholic and Christian world and teachings are extraordinarily complementary. And I think they each lack areas that the other makes up in. So right now, I'm a Catholic. I think the biggest struggle of the Catholic faith right now is that we're so worried about the rules, and you get so caught up in the rules of the faith, like obeying the church, the laws, the commandments, yada, yada, that it easily doesn't become personal, and you don't fall in love with Christ. Like, and I mean that seriously, like literally fall in love with Christ. You don't have that personal intimacy, personal relationship. And this is where Christians really get it. However, they struggle more with, they get the relationship. They get that they have eternal life now. I think what our Christian brothers and sisters struggle with more is how to live that out. Like, some of the most on fire Catholics are people that either went through a huge struggle or are Protestant converts. Like, they're the best Catholics, is because it's those two worlds together. They get the issue, the personal relationship, but they live it out the best. They're the happiest. They're not like the fronting hyper Catholics who obey all the rules, but like are torn up underneath. So how do you decipher Catholic teachings? What would the difference between a Catholic teaching and a Christian teaching be on these two? And I'm just kind of spitballing, see where my mind goes on this. There's slightly more relativism in all the Christian teachings. So maybe things like contraception are more okay. Maybe certain types of pornography, like it's okay to watch it with your spouse. Like the Catholic Church is just like notoriously for good. Black and white with a lot of their teachers, just like no or yes. And man, how do you decipher Catholic teachings on pornography from Christian teachings? Man, when I read through these earlier, I thought I could really tackle this. I might have to just skip it for right now and come back, see if anything else is coming up at the end. Yeah, I think I'm going to move on for right now. I'll come back and read more of that at the end, see if anything else is coming. Do you ever get tempted to watch pornography again? This is a great question, and this is actually what someone else on a different paper also asked. They asked, do you still have urges to view porn after getting over it? If so, how often? And the answer is yes. Temptations still creep in. And I actually do appreciate how you guys worded this, because part of the point of the talk, and I've articulated this better in other talks, but how do you get out of porn is not necessarily the right question. I think the right way to think about it, the ancient one talks about in Doctor Strange, where she says, we never lose our demons, we only learn to rise above them. There's like a transcendence, a rising up in the direction of heaven that happens. And that's where you find a freedom from pornography. So like the traditional, like you'll never live, the traditional like porn speaker who says your temptations will leave the day after you die, I disagree with. I experienced way different. Now, does it mean I never had a temptation again? No, I went massive amounts of time without a single temptation. I actually had a freedom, but that freedom is not defined as like a distance from pornography. It's a closeness to God. That is a freedom. Your identity as a son of God, like when you're really intimately there looking at our Father. Where's that other picture? One second. It's this. Like, when you have your identity, you can literally walk on water. You can rise above the drowning sea of temptation. Like, this is one of my favorite pictures, literally ever. And so do I still have urges? Yes, but they only happen at a certain time. And it is when I start looking away from Christ. It's when my days do not start with prayer, with like purposeful intimacy, when I get stuck in the busy. Like there was, I went through a long streak of freedom, of sobriety, when sobriety is not the goal, but it just happens when you're close to God. like the devil had to work about like literally a month to get me to a point where temptations really came in really hard. And it was like, I got so caught up in the busy of my work that I just quit praying. I allowed myself to quit praying. I was like, okay, I'm good. I've been a certain amount of time. And then he brought up a lot of personal stuff, like from past relationships. And it just like, I wasn't praying and I was in my own head. I was alone. And when this stuff kind of came up and hurt and the feelings hurt, I didn't turn to him immediately. One second, a pop-up came up. Remind me later. And that's where the temptations really started to shake me. So it doesn't mean that temptations, I think there's two levels of temptations is how I like to think about it, where there's the addict's more drowning temptations that are like daily, illogical. You can't get it out of your head. And then there's just the worldly temptations. And I think having a freedom from pornography is getting out of the constant drowning temptations every day and more into this world of temptation, back where now the devil, Satan, now they're just trying to get you away from God. They're trying to separate you back. You have a closeness. Now they'll never stop trying to pull you away. And I think that's where it's really good to define those two levels of temptation, because when the porn speaker says your temptations will stop the day after you die, that's correct, but it doesn't have to be drowning temptations of addiction. Like the Our Father prayer says that perfectly. It goes, at the very end of it, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I mean, the whole point, like, God doesn't want you to be tempted by that. When you're close to him, when you desire him, you don't go that direction. You're not looking for that. You're staring at him. You're walking on water. Boom. So do you ever get tempted again? Sure. How often? Whenever my prayer life decreases. Whenever my intimacy quits being intimate, whenever our relationship quits advancing. Okay, last one. How do you become spiritually alive? This person had great questions. How do you become spiritually alive? So in the talk, I kind of defined you are physically alive and spiritually alive. The physically alive is when your body and soul are like connected. And basically you're just alive. It's when your cells are alive with you, your personality. Like that's physically alive. When you are spiritually alive, that is when your soul and God, love, this God of love are connected. That is a spiritual life. And if you die on this earth physically without spiritual life, that's the end. That's separation. That's hell. That's death. You can attain that spiritual life now. So how do you become spiritually alive? Is through prayer. But it's like, it's specific prayer. It's and not specific, like here's the words to say. In the way that you've been in love with another human being, you can feel that, but greater with God. It's anyone who has experienced it knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I keep forgetting the actual wordage of this question. So yeah, that's the spiritually alive is when you know who you are because you know who God is flowing through you, your relationship with God and you are both connected, spiritually alive. Ooh, this next question. How am I a hero? So yeah, this was in the talk that I gave when I talked about, I said, you're the hero to the seventh and eighth graders. And I was getting at just like how it's the same thing that every superhero movie is trying to tell you. It's why they resonate so much in our hearts, is that when you watch it, every superhero, they have beefed up physical strength, or they can fly, or they have an armor around them. But a big part of what always makes them super is their humanity. Like this is consistent in so much, like Alita Battle Angel, her very human brain. Captain America, his extraordinary human faith, his heart. What else? Captain Marvel. Like she has the Kree blood. She has all these ridiculous powers that she can absorb, blast, and blow them out. But it's her humanity that when she like taps into that, she can overwhelm the supreme intelligence. And it's just like our humanity is so, that's our superpower, our superpower. And so how am I a hero? When someone asks that, this is the hero's journey. And this is kind of what I was trying to get at with the talk, is that you might not know it now. You might not know that you're a hero now. This is something that you kind of have to experience. And, what's the guy's name? Oh, Joseph Campbell wrote a book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he's talking about how the hero's journey, there's this consistent story narrative that every origin story talks about, every heroine story talks about. And it's how you have this place, this known world, this comfortable place that you're living. And then something happens to you. Peterson would say that a chaos enters your life and you journey into the unknown. When chaos enters your life, you're leaving your comfort zone, whether you went in that direction or not. This can be anything from you went into a car wreck to you went into the wrong class at school, something small like that, or a family member died. Anything unknown where you don't know what's happening. Being exposed to pornography is the one that I preach like crazy about. And the hero's journey, what they do is they do not avoid that struggle, that unknown. They do not try to climb immediately backwards into the known, comfortable world. Maybe initially they do, but how they become a hero and the whole thing about the human spirit, your identity, is your ability to go through the unknown, armed with truth, armed with the knowledge of your own spirit, through the unknown. And then you become more, you become greater. Peterson loves to talk about how one of the most true things is that this world is suffering. It's hard, it's crap. But like in Genesis, God created this world in a specific way because he made us with a spirit in his image. This is our heroine identity. We are the hero. We are the image of God. And because we have that image and likeness, we can not only rise above the suffering, above the hurt, above the suck, we can improve it. We can turn around, look into that darkness and make it better. This is like the human superpower. This is where all the stories come from. This is like our ability. So how am I a hero? How do you find that out? Is through an understanding of who you are. And there's a portion of that you might just have to experience, just part of life. You can be anything you want to be. You have the potential to do anything you want. The internet really adds to this. It allows this. I would have been an engineer forever. I would have been pretending to be super happy, but I hate sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. Our image and likeness of God is our ability to create good from anything, to do whatever we want. This is also where like the freedom, our will, comes from. It's our ability to transform anything life throws at us into any success story you've heard of anyone. That's them practicing out that they are a hero in their own way. This is, I'm gonna start rambling. So how are you a hero? Look in ways in which something happened to you and you made the best of it. That is a little bit of how you're a hero. And being able to hone in on that, now you get to start to experience it, and it builds, and then you understand it. What was the darkest part of your heart, and how did you fight it? Man. So a raw question, yeah. where this question comes from is in the talk, I talked about how I felt God's love the most. I really realized how bright his love shined when I brought him into the darkest place of my heart. And so this is just like a super personal question. I'll see how I can actually go into this. Also, this kid went to the grade school I went to also, which is dope. This is all part of the story with you become your true identity, your true self, not by avoiding the hardest things, but allowing God to love you for who you are, for all of it. Like, this is the core hero's journey. This is the core message of the gospel, is that God doesn't love you no matter what you do. He doesn't, it's not like he only looks at you and doesn't look at anything else. Like, that's a part of it, but he loves you through those things. He loves you through those things. Like, especially with something like pornography, you think, like, you start to blame yourself. Like, I'm a bad person because I watch pornography. But when you allow God into that, you bring him into those thoughts, God of truth, God of love, you start to see how he sees. And you start to love how he loves. And it's like, it's not the Bible verse, like, ask and you will find, knock and the door will be opened. It's, you got to be asking the right questions. And like with pornography specifically, it's not how far from porn can I get? It's how close can I get to God? It's like that darkest place in my heart. That was a place I avoided in prayer for a long time. That was a place every time I prayed and really was like feeling something awesome, I thought about that place. And it was something I did to someone. I think I hurt how they viewed the faith. And I didn't want to think about it. And so I buried it even deeper. And so every time, like, I was in prayer and God was like, hey, let's pray about this together. Let's walk through this. I was like, I don't want to. That hurts too much. And it was at a conference, an encounter with Christ, when finally I just broke. And I was like, yes, finally, I'm sick of carrying this. This is a anchor in my spiritual life. I know it is. Here you go. Here's how it makes me feel. And this was a couple of years ago, but man, the feeling is just right there. It's, the immediate thought that I had was, God just said, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for all of you. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what was the darkest part and how did I fight it? You fight it by not avoiding it, by learning who God is, how he loves. That's the whole story of the gospel. That's like the death and resurrection is dying those ugly parts, like killing those ugly parts so they can be reborn through Christ. That's so awesome. Thanks for asking that, man. I love going back to that place, because it's just, you can go through life and forget the good feelings. That's how Satan attacks you. He keeps you busy and distracted. This is from a 7th grader. Is it possible to stop on your own quietly if you're addicted, of course, to pornography? No. Straight up, no, that's not possible. And the reason for this is you need someone else, a close friend, an adult you look up to, basically to gut check you. The easiest person to fool is yourself. And then when you have another human being there, like calling out your BS, now you can actually be productive. This is the whole purpose of an actual accountability partner. It's not just to say like, hey, I fell the other day. It's like dissect like how you're doing, what's leading up to a failure. That's where you're supposed to call out each other and help each other grow. I get where this question comes from, because I wanted to be there forever. I was ashamed of like that I was watching pornography. But you need another human being that you can open up to. And this is a huge part of why confession is so important in the Catholic faith, is that it's another person that you're talking to. Because when you're alone and when you're in the quiet, that's where Satan does damage, because he can trick you. He can get you thinking certain things. But now when it's two people who are striving towards God, there's much less of a chance that he's going to be able to convince both of you. You're going to be able to sniff out each other's crap. I think you can make great strides on your own, but you can't do all of it on your own. There's a big prayer of humility that's basically any addict really needs to chase, because it's not on my own accord. Part of another place where temptations come in for me is when I start thinking I can do it on my own. That's another contributor to why I don't pray in the beginning of a day. It's like, no, I'm at 3 weeks. I got this. And Satan just comes in. He's like, he can't defeat God when God's flowing through you, but he can defeat you alone. So that's where you need someone else. When did you find your vocation? Oh boy. When did I find my vocation? Well, I think I always kind of knew I liked it. Talking real with people, talking about pornography, because I love talking about porn, because it's never just a conversation about porn. What it does, and why I get like so hyped up in some of this talk, is it opens a door to real conversation. Because if I can get you to talk a little bit about your struggle with pornography, okay, now you're being vulnerable. Now you're opening up. And just like how closely related that is to our human struggles and like our relationship with God and our relationship with others. There's so many other fascinating, just like conversation where I love to live that come from like through that door. You can go like 18 different ways. Oh my gosh. I love talking about pornography, mostly because of the conversations that follow. So I always knew that. I worked as an engineer for a little while, and I got a degree in mechanical engineering. I worked 2 years as a stress engineer. And it was when I started really speaking with my mother to parents about pornography. We really were going to start working in this realm when I started doing that. And I started doing more talks with the youth, with young adults. And just the way the conversations we have after pornography, when you see a spark in someone's eyes and it's like, that's cool. I love that. That fulfills a part of me that sitting at a desk and doing engineering just didn't. And that was just a personal thing. So that's what I left to chase. And I would say that's where I started to really find a part of my vocation as far as career-wise goes. And the reason I left engineering, my original idea was when I replaced my income, if I could, then I'd leave engineering. But I knew it would happen faster if I just went all in. And it's been the greatest grace. Not there yet, but giving it the real time that it needed to be able to learn about this whole arena and be able to talk about it and write the book. Oh my gosh, that's been the greatest gift. The best decision I ever made. That was just a couple of years ago. I think I'm going to save this question for another time. No, I'm not. Are you kidding me? How did you get over your addiction to porn? I was just looking at the time. I was like, I don't care. 34 minutes. We got this. How did you get over your addiction to porn? I'm going to answer this. I'm going to try to answer this a little differently every time it's asked, because I know I have several different people who ask this exact question. I got out of it when I realized the right question to ask is not how to get out of porn. The right question to ask is, how do I improve my life the best? It's not about stopping a certain behavior. It's about improving the overall quality and depth of your life. When you're not happy with who you are, because you're ignoring certain parts of your life, it's really easy to only be attracted to the hyperactive parts, the super sexual, super pleasurable stuff. That's part of what drives an addiction. And there's a lot of shame built around that. And if you actually ever step back and look at your life, like where it's going, if you aren't guided in that peering into your own life, it's like overwhelming. And a good remedy that can make you forget everything is more pornography or something else really distracting, maybe something like social media or video games, just like stuff that doesn't add to your life, fulfill you, like tap into your purpose. How did you get out of porn? So I realized that it wasn't the right question. It's not how do you get out of porn? How do you rise above porn? And it's by adding to your life. The initial version of the book I'm writing, which is on how to get out of pornography, but it's not called that. It's called Finding the Flame. That's a nod to because the question isn't how to get out. It's like how to live your best life, how to live on fire. Man, I looked outside and there's this person running with a stroller in front of him, and that just derailed me. Why did that derail my brain? Man, Satan must be pumped right now. I must have been going in a good direction. He likes distracting me when I do that. Lord. Help me realign. So I'm paying attention to him. I started realizing where the distractions were coming from and what pornography does. And really the last piece of the puzzle, I know there's so much more to this, like learning about the science of addiction and the dopamine, and but it's learning where the distractions were coming from. Satan's greatest plan is to pull us away from God. If you notice what I literally just did there, I noticed hey, I was going away from God. Let's realign. Let's get back connected. God, be here with me. It's the connection with him, your identity. It's a depth that exists when you are really present with him. What pornography does, what social media does, what video games do, is they offer something that's like a hyperactivity. It's really stimulating. However, the end result is you're physically alone, not connecting with another person. This is also why it's really hard to do it alone, to get out alone. We are made for connection. I think it was Harvard. I'll have to look that up. I don't want to yell that out, but there's this old study, one of the longest running studies ever on human happiness. And they literally followed these people through their entire life. It's forever. It's 80 years. It's a long time. And what they found is the number one contributor to a person's happiness is not money. It's not success. It's not wealth. It's not how many people they know. It is a deep relationship with another. It is a communion with another person. That is what makes us the happiest, is a deep connection. And so how do you get out of pornography? Is understanding that that's what you live for. A connection with God. When you have that connection with God, he wants you to live out what that's like. He wants to give, he wants to gift you a human I'm saying this so wrong. I know I am. He wants you to experience a joy on this world with another human. He wants you to experience it with him first and foremost, and that you're always aiming towards him. But you can do that with another on earth. Anything like pornography, if you're paying attention closely, you'll notice that these things are pulling you back. And so in my prayer life right now, because it's the same correct way to think about it, the same question exists when you're still watching porn and when you're out of porn. That's how you quit. If you can think of those two areas, if you still have the same question, and that's how am I finding my flame? How am I growing closer to God? Just because you're watching porn or not, the answer shouldn't change. And it's, what am I doing in my life that's pulling me away from a real relationship that I actually like with God? What's helping me not understand it? What's pulling away from that depth? What's cutting off my spirit? That's how you get out. You learn to live in that realm. And in all the prayer of our church, that's the invisible world. That's the invisible world that is always mentioned, is the depth. That's where our spirit lives. That's where meaning lives and love lives. That's where this place of action, our religion, lives. This is a good long video. I'm glad I'm like working through a whole chunk. Last question, okay? If Adam and Eve, this is a good one. Holy cow. Also, this person's birthday is July 3rd, which is a day before my birthday. So happy birthday. If Adam and Eve were technically nude in the Garden of Eden, why is porn so bad? Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, I have a couple different ways I want to answer this. First off, they did not know that they were nude. Before they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they did not know they were nude. After they ate there, they noticed they were nude and they clothed themselves. So why is porn bad if they were nude before? It's because they didn't know they were nude. They were not focused on that. They lived in the spiritual communion with each other. That was their primary focus. Porn is so bad because the primary focus is no longer the connection. It's just the physical excitement. Now that those desires are very natural and they add to the spiritual intimacy. And this is what Satan attacks. He makes you think that those desires are bad. The desires that drive you towards pornography. They're not bad, they're misguided. Pornography exploits those desires, but the whole goal is isolation. The whole goal is it's for me, for myself. You're not loving someone else, you're loving what they give you. So that's another thing why pornography is bad. Also, and just a thought, and this is just a cool, like, man, this might open a door to further thought, but I've been really looking more into the story of creation and in Genesis and just learning more about that first book of the Bible. There's two stories of creation. There's an order in this creation where there's Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. Man, this LaCroix keeps coming up. Excuse me. But there's an order in the story of creation where there's God creates all the physical world, and then he creates Adam and Eve, and they live in perfect harmony with him and with each other in the Garden of Eden. And then the snake comes in, and they eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then they realize they're naked. And then basically from that point on, you get all of human history. Like then you get into Cain and Abel, then you get into the Abrahamic stories. From what I can tell and my current understanding of kind of the book of Genesis is it's more of a story of spirituality and consciousness, and that it's more poetic than it is scientific. And what I mean by that is it's more them telling why you act certain ways, and kind of trying to find the origins of that, why you have certain desires and certain actions, why you might actually kill your brother if you feel so wronged because you're doing something similar. That's the Cain and Abel stories. And with Adam and Eve, the Garden of Evil, the fall of man, so it wasn't written by scientists. This is from Jordan Peterson. I mean, science has only existed like 500 years. These stories are more like campfire stories. They're more like poems. They're handed down. Only the most important bits are ever remembered and kept. Like thousands of years of just telling the story. And it's like the oldest tales that you can think of that aren't religious. Like they have a moral reasoning that they exist. And I think that's more where these stories come from. So it's humanity's kind of really grasping at like, who are we? Why do we act a certain way? And when you learn about God and you learn about our consistently resisting him and falling in love with him, like why those two things exist, it makes the most sense to kind of spell it out in the story of creation and perfect union with God. And then evil comes into the world, a separation from God, death. These are all the same: evil, separation from God, and death, or they all mean the same thing. So when they talk about the fall of man, how I kind of have been interpreting it recently is everything that happened before, I kind of all like look at one event, like all the way up until basically the fall of man is like the old biblical authors describing humanity, why we act a certain way. When you spell it out with that little timeline, then it's easier to kind of grasp than trying just to describe different qualities of humans. So I think that still works well with the answer that they were technically nude in the garden, but they didn't know they were nude. They were only concerned with a connection. So pornography is bad is because now that we know we're nude and we know that like, oh, that's exciting, and you only focused on that, you don't worry about the connection. That's where a death and separation comes from. That's where like the evil, the death, that's a spiritual death. When you only worried about the physical, it's like the world versus God. It's the first Adam, which is humanity, and then the new Adam in Genesis, Christ coming. He comes to redeem us through our sin, not ignoring it through it. That's actually a huge, this is a big part of the book that I'm writing, is like kind of really being able to understand who we are, where we come from, why we act certain ways. And it's just like an interpretation of Genesis that like opened up my eyes to parts of my faith I didn't understand for the longest time, which drove questions like this. So hopefully that helped. Oh my gosh, that was a bunch. Holy cow, almost 50 minutes. This is awesome. I can't wait to do more Q&As like this. I think I'm going to aim to start doing these on Sunday evenings. So let me know what you think about that. If you have any further questions, please down in the comments, any further explanations on questions that I did answer, if I've rambled, like just what do you think? What do you think? How do you like the Q&A? I think I'm going to go forward with the live streams just because that helps me the best working through these. And I really don't want to try and sell these short and just like give small answers. That's why I really kind of let myself just go on and on, because I really want this to be more of a good place of discussion. So please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for being here. Goodbye forever. End.